I am Matt Wilhelmi, and I'm the owner of Strategic Voyages Business Consultants. I'm also the author of Taboo Business Questions, What's Haunting Every Entrepreneur's Growth. And today I'm joined by Andrea Herran of Focused HR, Uncomplicating the People Side of Business. Andrea, thanks so much for spending some more time with me.
It's been my pleasure. This has been fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so just to get everybody kind of caught up here, Andrea and I were going through a case study. It's a client that I have been involved with for a while, and they've got some really, really messy HR stuff and people issues in their business. And specifically what we've been talking about is their sales department, where they had some turnover, they had some messy processes. Andrea asked some really, really great questions to kind of get us focused in on what the specific issues were. And in our second episode, we touched on these three different issues. And I think maybe Andrea's got a way to kind of wrap those up into some different recommendations, which is where we're going to be focusing our time on right now, is kind of the solutions, right? It's okay. Well, we've done a lot of data mining. We've figured out a lot of things. We've asked some questions. We know what the issues are going to be because Andrea's been there. She's 30 years plus in the HR world. Probably not going to be surprised by much these days. And so now we're talking about, what do we do from here? Where do we go with these two young guys trying to build this company? And so, Andrea, I'm going to pass it over to you, and maybe you can kind of go through that first recommendation. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Fantastic. Thank you, Matt. What I want to do is, because it's really easy to get stuck in the weeds on all the little different things that need to be done. So I want to pull us back and take a look back at the big picture of this. And what I mean by that is they need to create a strategy about a people strategy, from the positions, the recruiting, the onboarding, and their operations, and then create an implementation plan to go along with it. So what I like to do is I like to ask my clients, it's like, just think about, close your eyes, whatever helps you, envision the perfect day. What does that look like for you? Think about how people are behaving, interacting with each other, how they are working with your clients, providing the services. You yourself as the owner, what is it that you're focused on? What is it that you're doing on a regular basis? And once you have that picture, kind of write it down, get that clear, and then create the implementation plan to go along with it. There's a lot of business books out there about how to organize your business, how to do things. And the common thread between all of these books is about having systems. Systematize as much as you can. So therefore, your energy is spent on other endeavors, whether it's growing a new product line, a different vertical in your market, new customer base, whatever that is. So you can create, by systematizing it, you create consistency. So you have some areas that when you know that they're working well and people are following those systems, you as the owner now don't have to worry about them. And you can focus on what it is that you like.
Andrea, that leads into something that I've often found myself saying, which is, you don't actually manage the people, you manage the process. Because if you're managing the process, I know it sounds crazy, right? If you have like a process, you can actually manage the process. But if you're managing the people all the time, you're going to come across as like this micromanager kind of person, right? What did you do today? How did you do it? Why did you do it this way? Are you done yet? Did you do it yet? How about now? It's like, leave me alone. Well, what does the process say?
Oh my gosh, you're so speaking my language. Now, I always tell people you can't manage people. You can only manage process. You lead people. If you're trying to manage people, that's your first mistake. Manage the process. Get the process figured out. That way, all you're doing is leading people and helping them understand the process, why it's there, so they can follow it and be consistent. If you have to constantly ask people, what have they been doing today and so forth, I'm going to borrow something from the manufacturing world, which is called root cause analysis. You need to go back and see why that's happening. Is it your lack of confidence in their abilities? Is it because they have not been trained right? Is it because you have the wrong person? Do you have the wrong systems? Keep going back until you can figure out what it is that's causing that, and then you can move forward and you can go back to leading.
Yeah, I actually, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I think, it brings me back to these three phrases that I find myself saying a lot. And, when I'm brought into companies, Andrea, I'm often seen as like the numbers guy. I've got an accounting background. I've been in banking. I've done finance, that kind of thing. And so the CFO role is typically where I fit. But what ends up happening is that CFO conversation, it's almost like the business owner can only spend a little bit of time in that box. And they're like, okay, I'm done in that box. I can't look at the numbers forever. Now what? What do we do? How do we get the people to work better? That kind of thing. And so the three things I end up thinking about is that the CFO knows that numbers drive decisions. That's what it does, right? The CEO knows that leaders decide the process. But what I try to do is help them realize that the people are going to deliver the results. If they can remember those three things, then they're going to do really, really great things in their business. But if the leaders are deciding the people, they're skipping a rung there. There's no process. And so you have to have, a process. And I think in this specific example, we've been talking about hiring. And if the company doesn't have a hiring process, it's almost setting themselves up to fail. They've got no consistency. They've got no predictability. They've got no way of measuring it. And believe me, I want to measure every single process. Where are we at? What do the numbers say? How are we doing in this process? You can't do that if you're just kind of messing around and inconsistent with your hiring.
Yeah, well, what happens, what you're measuring then is turnover. And then, as we talked about before, then the cost of that. What does it mean to have a department of 5 where 3 people are leaving, every other month, and the cost that's associated with that, especially in sales? Then you can talk about the cost of, figure out how to measure the cost to your reputation out in the marketplace, and in my mind, the dollar signs just keep adding up and adding up. It's just too expensive to ignore.
Absolutely. Yeah. So just making sure that I heard your first kind of solution here correctly. Creating a system, super important. But I think you even had like a story, right? Of like your exercise you might ask somebody to do is almost like envisioning what they're trying to create. And it's almost like answering a question of who do we want to become and how are we going to get there? If you can answer those 2 questions, I think a lot of this will work itself out. But I've found that a lot of business owners don't spend time asking those questions. And if they do ask those questions, they don't spend time answering those questions. And so perhaps they need to hire somebody like you, Andrea, where you can help kind of give them that platform and that environment to nurture that conversation and really spend the time on it that it needs.
Absolutely. And I will tell you that by not answering that question, another way that it will affect them later is if they ever try to sell the business. You can talk to anybody who does M&A or business sales, that a company that doesn't have systems and is still very reliant on the founder, the owner, does not get the
they don't get
the multiplier, the EBITDA multiplier for their business.
Right. Yeah, they just don't get it. They don't get that top line, multiple of EBITDA that you're talking about because there's no process. And M&A people, they want it to be repeatable, right? They want it to be almost like a McDonald's where it's like, okay, every day we know we're going to make X amount of dollars because of all these other things.
Yep, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that.
All right. So you had a couple other ideas that we were kind of kicking around. And, we spent a lot of time talking about the system and the process, which are words that I love and, can very much talk a lot about. But what were some of the other things that maybe they could do?
Well, when it comes to salespeople in particular, sales is usually something that's a little bit too close to owners because they see the dollars coming in, and then they're so reliant on that. So it's hard for them to lead a team of salespeople. So my recommendation is typically you need to get a sales leader to handle your sales team. You don't want the owner handling the sales. And I'm going to tell you right now, because I've seen this happen too much. I'm going to take my best salesperson and put him in charge of the sales team.
Don't do it. I'm going to say right now,
No.
don't do it.
And then they're like, why did my sales drop?
Yeah.
Because you just took your best
Why is
person out of
everything
the
not
field.
working?
Yeah. Two things there. Typically, your best salesperson doesn't want to lead. They may do it for you because they like you. You know, you're the owner. They've got a reputation with you. They care for you. They want to see you succeed. But you've just taken your highest producer out of the field. So now your sales numbers are going to drop. They may not be a people leader, you know, so therefore you're not going to get the training and all that from everybody else. So if you're going to do it internally, take a look at the middle of the road person, the one who's doing a great job. They're not accelerated, but they seem to train people. They kind of seem to be a natural leader. That's the person you promote. Please, please don't ever take your best salesperson and put him as sales manager. Please.
But organizations do that all the time. I mean, I've seen it done. I've been a part of it. I've been skipped over because of that. I've seen it. People continue to do it. It boggles my mind because it does seem like it's such a well-known faux pas. You don't want to do that.
Well, because it follows the, you know, you promote your best people.
Yeah.
Which in most positions, that works perfectly.
Yeah. I mean, that's the principle, right? I don't know if you're familiar, but the Peter principle is if you perform really well in your job, you're likely going to get promoted, you know, to the next level, but eventually going to get promoted so high that you don't know how to do that job.
Right. Absolutely.
So hiring that sales leader is really, really key. I heard you say that. That's some great advice. You did, you know, kind of say something in our break where I want to touch on the third thing because it's so hard for business owners to do. But I'd love to hear you kind of talk about it because it's fascinating to me.
Yeah, this is of the three solutions, this one is the hardest for owners because you've got to delegate and let it go. You know, and part of to delegate properly, you know, it's not just saying here, do this, but if you're delegating, you need to understand as the owner, as the CEO, what information do you need from that person so you feel comfortable that everything is running smoothly? So, you know, from sales, is it understanding the opportunity pipeline that they're in? Is it about, you know, their forecasting, you know, and are they meeting it? How often do you measure that? Because do you really need to know if Fred is going to ABC company and XYZ company, or do you just need to know that Wilma has 10 companies in the pipeline at different stages and they should start hitting, you know, somewhat regularly? Because what is it that you really need to know? So it needs to be that big. Hold the people that are leading those departments or that area accountable to providing you those results so you or that information so you feel comfortable and you don't have to be going back in and say, but what's happening? Where's the next sale? You know, what's going on? You know, I thought Barney was going to be out selling. Why is he sitting at his desk? You know, how's he going to sell from his desk?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, the key there is the delegate and let go. Obviously, it's almost like answering this question of, you know, trying to figure out like what's going really well without micromanaging, right? Because nobody wants to be micromanaged. It's almost like the naughty word in business. You know, I haven't found anybody yet that's like, oh, I love to be micromanaged. Nobody says that, but I think everybody wants to know what's going well, and it's really tough to do that without a process. And a leader who's not the founder or the owner would probably have their finger more on the pulse in a relaxed, confident kind of way than the founder would. So those are some really good recommendations. So, Andrea, I want to tell you that all of these ideas are not only really, really powerful, they're also basically what they did. And so, yeah, so A+, good job. Yeah, I mean, I'm serious. So what they ended up doing is they figured out that they can't be the best at everything right now. They started out as a young company. Obviously, you know, guys started the company in their early 20s. When they got to about 30 employees, what they decided to do was split the company where they were only going to focus on the installation side of their business. They were going to be the best installers, for this particular service, but they still needed sales. And so what they did is they actually packaged up their sales numbers and their team and their processes, whatever they had, and they outsourced it to another company that now it's a very predictable cycle. They know they're going to get a lead, and all they have to do is go and install it. There's a very, very, very simple sales cycle because they're not doing the sales anymore. So A+ for figuring out, the best way to go and how to get there. I'm curious though, Andrea, if you wouldn't mind, just like, of all of the different service companies that you've helped, how many do something like that? Because I think that it's really tough to like understand your own weaknesses and then kind of just like, just own it. And I'm curious, like, how many business owners have you seen that like actually do that?
It's one of those things that's easier said than done. It's easy to say, delegate, let go. So there has to be some trust built in. Part of the systems that we were talking about is that information system. Do people do it? Yes. Does it happen overnight? No. It takes time. It typically, if they've gone from, just to use the micromanaging, to go from micromanaging to delegating and being a proper CEO can sometimes take 6 to 12 months, because they may realize in the process they don't have the right person in the right seat. They maybe have the right person, but they're not in the right seat. They should be someplace else, or they're just not the right person, right seat at all for the company. So it takes some time. And something else that you have to consider is, depending on the growth cycle of the business, you may need different kinds of leadership throughout that. So at a startup, you need leaders who are very nimble, can change, can adapt very quickly. Once you start systematizing and things start going smoother, you need a different kind of person, because that person who's always on the go and willing to change and so forth, you don't want them doing that once it's all figured out and you've got systems in place. And they probably aren't comfortable with that. They like things to be messier and fixing it up. And then you have those that like the steady and maintaining, that can't survive in the constant changing environment. So understanding that, they may have been great. Actually, I just had this conversation yesterday with one of my clients. It's like, yeah, you got the right people for what you needed at that time. Now the business is in a different phase. You need a different skill set, a different kind of person, and almost up-leveling what you're looking for. So yeah, now you're in that phase, and that's going to be a little, tricky. And then you get to what I call adult stage. It's like children. Startup is when they're babies. The starting to even things out and so forth are the awkward teenage years. And then once you get it done, you're like an adult, you know what's going on and so forth. And now you can get into more growth and going from there.
Yeah. I mean, and eventually get to be an empty nester, and, then you're worried about legacy planning.
Yep, so, exactly.
Whole life cycle. Well, Andrea, thanks so much for spending some time with me today. Again, if you're watching this video, I am just really honored to be with Andrea Herran of Focus HR, uncomplicating the people side of business. Andrea, thanks so much for your time and unpacking this really interesting case study with me. It means a lot. Appreciate it.
No, thank you. I love the exercise, and I hope people find it useful.
We'll talk to you soon.